All right, good morning. Thank you for your patience waiting for here. So, Katie Novak, who you all have had a chance to meet, she called me. I was at my daughter's cross-country meet about a month ago. It's a great opportunity for you, which always worries me. If you work for Katie, you know great opportunities come with some interesting work output. So I said, I have a great opportunity for you. You have to do this. And so she told me I really need someone that can talk about scheduling in the MTSS system. And I was so close to just hanging up on her. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, just to give you an idea how I got here. Okay, so my name is Mike Woodlock. I'm now in my 4th year as being the principal of Groton-Dunstable Regional High School. Just to show you how many high school, secondary ed people are here? Okay, how about middle school? And elementary school? Okay, so all you elementary school people, I don't want you to be worried that we're not going to talk about elementary scheduling at all. Okay? In fact, all of you should be worried because I don't even have a schedule that meets the needs that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so I don't want to be a hypocrite, but what I want to tell you is this is something we've been working on and talking about and researching. So if you're thinking of attempting this, or you're in the middle of going through it, or you have a schedule that you're looking to tweak, I think this will be a good opportunity for those kind of discussions. So don't think I'm a hypocrite talking about something that I'm not even doing. This is something I plan on doing, and that we're working very hard to do. So what our objective today is to make adjustments to and within our schedules that are going to better meet the needs of all students. All right, and I'm going to try and emphasize the word all as much as I can throughout my presentation, because that is the whole purpose of this. And I think Katie's heartfelt keynote today really drove it home. All right, that these kids are all entitled to everything we have. Right, so that's our focus. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys to try and do something today. I'm not giving you a ton of time either. So it's a little warm-up, okay? And it may seem like an odd request or a stretch as to where we're going with this, but what I'd like you guys to do, if you can, if you have the ability to access it quickly or even know where to find it, to find your district's district accommodation plan, your DCAP. Everyone is required to have one by law, okay? And see if you can answer this question. How does your district DCAP support all students to access rigorous Tier 1 coursework? Now, if that's not an easy find for you, which honestly it would take me a few minutes, if you want to just type in that little web address, you can access Groton-Dunstable's because you don't really need your own to do this exercise. Or, because I'm trying to represent a little bit of UDL teaching, I have some hard copies. If anyone would prefer a paper copy that you can write on or highlight, would anyone like one? All right, how about I just leave a few at each table, maybe save me some time? Yeah, me too. Oh, that's not right. A couple back here. Anyone the other side want a hard copy?
I'm not super pleased. I haven't remembered much.
It's cool.
It was always my plan. I'm thinking MTSS. I like to comment on the part of this. We used to decide those to call LSD process. Individual council back there to come up with and it looked different on every usability. Yeah, right on the
Anyone
Ours does not.
So I find that it is, it's like a super
Yeah.
That's nice. I didn't know what that was going to sound like. All right. So, I know you came here to talk about scheduling, and I'm bringing up DCHAP, so that might be a tough bridge. But did anyone feel like they could adequately answer that question? It's a very broad question, so does anyone want to share? For some reason I thought that would be the response. So, as I mentioned, the core principle principle of MTSS is being able to reach, teach all students. Okay? The fact of the matter is that in a lot of schools across the Commonwealth and across the country, students just don't have, all students, don't have regular access to Tier 1 instruction. It just is not happening across the board. And I'm not saying that as an expert who has figured out how to do it, and it's happening in my school, because it's not. In my school, we are working very hard to try and eliminate this, but it is really not that easy. So why does the DCAP, first of all, is anyone here, don't feel bad, does anyone here really not know what their DCAP is? Okay? If you asked me that like 7 years ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Okay, when I was still teaching, you'd be like, I'm not really DCAP, I'm just teaching. Leave me alone so I can teach you. Okay? But if we don't have adequate scaffolding and accommodations inherent in all of our classes, we really can't do this MTSS stuff. And I'm speaking for myself as a principal of a high school. I can't begin to eliminate the inequities in my classes if I don't have teachers willing to use the DCAP. All right, so you guys had a chance to look at your DCAP or look at some of these, right? All right, what would be some, can you come up with maybe from a teacher's point of view, some of the reaction you might get if you said all students have access to this? Did anyone think they would get negative feedback from their teachers? Yes, okay, good. It's not just me. Okay, so immediately, I think, you know, I have the privilege to work with, you know, I walked into a pretty high performance business, and that's a privilege, I guess, but it's also like I'm missing out on a lot of things because my wife works in the inner city, and some of the things that she has to share, it's like maybe much more fulfilling in some ways. But when I ask a teacher, you know, I don't want to pick on math teachers, but they're a little bit less flexible than everyone else, okay? That's the fact. When I ask my math teacher, like, here's a district accommodations plan, make sure that if a kid is struggling to use these, they'd be like, I'm not going to give them extra time. What am I be teaching them? It's not fair to everyone else. Are those the kind of, am I off base? Is that the kind of feedback we're going to hear from some teachers? But from some teachers? That's pretty common, and I would say, I'd be a hypocrite to say if I didn't think that way when I was teaching as well. But I've evolved, thankfully, over the course of a decade or so, and look at education totally differently. And I think that's a big thing that we need to do and why we need to think about a DCAP when we think about MTSS, because if we don't have a DCAP plan that teachers begin to utilize, then it's going to be really difficult to teach all students in one grade, one class setting, in one section of algebra, or one section of English. Okay? That would be incredibly difficult. So, let's go to the next slide. Okay? One thing that I'll probably talk about a lot during this is proportional scheduling. Okay? How does that relate to DCAP? So proportional scheduling, if you're not familiar with the phrase, essentially if you look at the demographics of your school, of your district, and then you look at the individual classes. So for me it's high school, so if I look at the demographics of my high school, and I have 15 or 20% students on IEPs, then when I pull up a given section in my high school, it should be reflective of that. I can tell you that it's not. Okay, so we're not proportionally scheduled in all of our classrooms. In some of our classrooms we are. But let's take a couple minutes just to address this question and consider this diagram. When you think about classes in your school or district, are subgroups of students all equally represented and distributed in general education classrooms? So just talk amongst the tables and maybe people will share other things. 2 minutes.
We're probably not good to have a conversation with another subset. So,
where is that? I'm sorry, where? On the door. Yeah. It's like on the New Hampshire border.
where are you from?
I'm from Groton Public Schools. Yes. I'm the chief academic officer of Groton.
Oh,
Yeah.
so my
We have some separate classrooms in our district.
requirement, like,
Right.
to provide services.
Right, and there are some kids that we see identified as additional services.
You can't do it sometimes, but that's what I'm saying, right? Because they can do it.
I think it's also dependent on her lens. And now it has. But it used to be the only she's all got
Come back together.
they have a higher special ed multiplier. Higher percentage of identified special ed.
You guys are an amazing group. Thank you. All right, so how about this question? When you think about classes in your school district, are these subgroups represented proportionally in your classes? Anyone want to share? Yes? No? Definitively no? Good point. I didn't even have that in my notes. She says, I don't know if you heard, but IEPs are written in certain ways that don't allow us flexibility. Am I saying it right? Good point. Yes, we're struggling with that in my school as well. That's something we need to consider when we're changing a schedule. If we decide to change a schedule, are the IEPs going to be they need to be changed, or we need to start writing them differently to maybe accommodate a change in scheduling? That's a really good point. I didn't even consider. Yes.
So ours is also a no. We actually schedule our special education students first, but we group them for the efficiency of the adult trying to meet those services. So the kids are grouped by services, but it's to make it efficient for the adults. And so what happens is you have some classrooms that have higher than the proportional number and others that don't have any at all.
Okay, these are important things to think about. So finite resources in terms of teachers and specialists and things like that that you need to fulfill either an IEP or what students need are going to hamper whether or not you can do that. There we go. Anyone else want to share part of their story? This is honestly the most valuable thing we can do is learn from each other. Yes.
I think at the high school level, we run into issues where our upper level classes, honors, AP, etc., have no representation by user proportional.
If I had said that, it would have been the exact same thing at my high school. We get honors and AP classes, and when we dug into them, and we didn't have to dig too deep, like none of our students on IEPs are taking AP classes ever. And you can't tell me that everyone has a disability, a learning struggle that's going to keep them from succeeding high, in a high degree in something. Of all the kids on IEPs, no one can get to an AP class. So there's something inherently structurally wrong with my school if that's not happening ever. All right. So, but don't get scared. There's a ton of things to think about. Okay. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to work through to start meeting some of these needs. And it is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to come up with a schedule for next year and install it, and then we've solved it. All right, but you have to start somewhere, and that's one of my big things I want you to take away from here is it's going to take a while, but you can make small incremental changes every day or every year if we're doing small changes to the schedule. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've done a whole bunch of things incrementally to try to build what exists in our schedule. The thing that I find the hardest is that it's an organic system, so that everything we do, the system reacts to, and the reality is there is a pressure out there amongst parents and other folks to push against that. People want to get out of the classes with those kids. The second they notice that those kids are showing up in their class, they melt away from those classes. Even though we say you can't pick teachers, you can't pick classes, somehow or another the kids find a way to flow from one place to another, even if it's by taking CPR, so they don't have to be in the class that's at the same period. So you have to, we ended up, last spring as we were really fully implementing Groton, getting everybody in guidance in a room and kind of going through all the things. And I made everybody hold their hand hands up in the air and said like, they're gonna count and they're gonna hold fast to like noticing when this happens before we even realize it happens. Nonetheless, we had to redo everybody's schedule for the last 2 weeks to push the kids back into classroom at the end of the day.
So, assuming high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're not from high school, actually I thought high school was much worse until my wife told me what they did at her elementary school. And I'm like, I don't want any part of that either, that sounds horrible. But in high school, I actually met with parents last year as we started a new initiative to try and create a proportional schedule for some of our classes, just for this reason. My student performs very highly. I don't want her impacted by bringing those kids in. So that's a mindset that we have to deal with, and we have to really push back against nicely, okay? Because their parents, their community members, they don't have the opportunity to maybe be educated on some of these things like we do, and so that's part of our job. And again, that's going to take time too, okay? And again, remember this is never going to get done. You're always going to be working towards the end result here, and by the time you get to the end result where you thought it was, there's going to be something else. So it's a continual progress. Continual progress has to be our goal. All right, so if we look at this, I think it's a pretty good diagram here. You see the gray circle. So as we improve, what's going to happen to that gray circle? How is this going to change? It's going to get bigger, right? So these things that are just barely touching general education are going to be slowly consumed at larger percentages. Will we overconsume all of them? Well, probably not. There's going to be cases, and hopefully I do a good job of documenting, where sometimes kids do need to get pulled out of a class. All right, that is going to happen. I have first-hand knowledge of that. So, all right, let's see if we can keep moving here. All right, just to touch upon this real quick. This Katie, is that out of focus? I wear contacts, so sometimes I can't tell. Is that better? All right. So if you go to accountability data, you can find lots of examples of, how we're not meeting things. So this is specific to some high school students, but talking about meeting or getting to advanced coursework, okay, proportional scheduling. We're just not doing it as a state. I know we're not doing it as a district, and it sounds like for you guys, you're struggling with it too. And it's not a high school problem. For those of us in high school, we've seen it for lots of years. Like if the MCAS scores aren't good, well, like the middle school's really not doing their job preparing these kids. And the middle schools can say the elementary schools aren't doing it. But when things go well, we also have to acknowledge like this is a K through 12 success. And if we're going to do this, it can't just be, high school, no one's in APs, okay? No special education students in APs. That's not just because the high school has an issue. It is the elementary school and the middle school and a district-wide belief that we can put all these kids in the same groups and it can be successful. So you guys all have different data management systems, right? Like Aspen or Power School, School Brains, those kind of things. You have an ability to click on a roster, and you guys all have icons for when kids are, maybe on an IEP or a 504, have medical needs. It's the same for all of them, right? So that's the first thing that I did when we started digging into proportionality of scheduling. Just go through some of your rosters and see if you have a lot of red dots next to students' names. And like if I looked in CP2 chemistry, we have a CP2, CP1 honors AP, all right? If I look at CP2 chemistry, there's going to be a lot of red dots, and that's not very proportional. Right? There should be about 15% red dots. So those are things that we're involving our staff in and say, let's look at this together. This isn't where we want to be, right? And I've also heard, because I have inside information, that sometimes in elementary school, that one teacher gets like the English language population for that year. Maybe there's going to be some specialists in there working with those kids, or one teacher in the grade level this year is going to get a high percentage of kids on IEPs. That's not proportional either. Sometimes that's a reality of like, well, we have a specialist, we only have one, they need to be in there. All right, so that's a big structural issue that you need to look at, and again, it takes time. Steve?
The idea of CP1
Yes,
Yes.
100%. Because we have it, because it's been there forever. And so I'm not preaching to you as someone that I figured this out. We've identified that as a problem. But these barriers that we're facing, whether it's in high school or elementary school or wherever, they've been in existence for a long time. Like before I was born, they started tiering students in high school. You're an honors kid, and you're a CP kid. I went to Germany last year to study some of what they do, and the equivalent of their like 9th or 10th grade, they separate kids like you were going to go to college, you were going to be a tradesman, and as a 9th grader, right? So it's not just us, all right? So yeah, it's a great point. We want to eliminate that as much as we can. Yes, correct.
Families and school systems that push back and say it can't be done. It's a mindset that needs to change. And this is the type of movement that could come.
So can everyone hear in the back? So NEASC is an accreditation group that does a lot of high school accreditation, I think some middle schools too. And one of their standards indicates that you should have heterogeneously grouped classes. And most schools just take the, what did my kids say? Take the L on that one, okay? They just say, we're not going to be able to do that because guess what? My parents are not going to support that. So it's a mindset change. We talked a lot in my last facilitated group about mindset, teachers' mindsets, administrators' mindsets, and it's a gradual change. I'd like to say we could snap our fingers and say that's not happening anymore, but it isn't. But I can give you examples of maybe how we are attempting to change that.
So maybe,
Yes, go right ahead, jump right in.
maybe the first step is to change some of the institutional practices that like allow this to continue, and that's that whole we have a voice part of it. You know, how can we at our individual locality make that change to the institution how it works, right? You know, so can you go to the school committee with a program of studies and get rid of CP2, right? I mean, like that's the position everyone
can.
here
You
is
really can do
able
that.
to do, right?
So, that's a great idea, and the fact of the matter is, we can do that. We can get rid of CP2. And I'm telling you right now that I haven't changed our schedule yet, we're working on that, but I have changed part of our schedule. And it's taken 3 years to get teachers to say, I'm willing to try it. And I'm sure this can work in middle school and elementary school too, but I've gotten some teachers on board. I shouldn't say we as a collective group have gotten some teachers on board to say, you're right, we need to be equitable, we need to be proportional, let's try it. So this year, there is no CP2 in social studies at Groton-Dunstable, where there was last year.
Right.
Okay? Last year, we got rid of CP1 and CP2 for Spanish. All Spanish classes are honors, regardless of who you are, where you come from. Because the teachers there have efficacy. They believe that all of the students can learn Spanish because they're really good at what they do. And guess what? All of the students are learning Spanish. This year we're piloting in 9th grade open honors English, something totally different that we've never done before. So everyone in there is proportionally scheduled. If you look at our 9th grade English classes, you will see about the same percentages of students with IEPs and 504s or any other subgroup that we looked at in the previous slide. You're going to see that represented in 9th grade English, where the students have a choice to participate in their education to decide after a couple weeks, do I want to do what it's going to take to get honors credit, or am I going to go the CP track? And then after the first quarter, they can make a different choice, right? But they will be in the same classroom. But the teacher is the one changing what the expectations are through their practice. Yes, sir.
So when you're talking about proportionality, what I just heard there was that your expectation is that the students are proportionally in the same class, but not necessarily choosing to participate to the same standard. Would you expect that proportionality in kids who are choosing to take it?
We are going to find out. So, again, it's a great question. Is this pilot going to work? I don't know. It might come out that way. We haven't got the data yet to see who's going to choose what and how successful they're going to be. But once we get it, then we can tweak it. We can say, this didn't work, it didn't end up proportional. How come? But what we do know is that before, there was an honors level English 9 student, and there was a CP level English 9 student, and now they're all in the same class. So they're all getting access to the same teacher, teaching the same things. They just might be choosing to go a little bit further in their assessments or with their expectations than a CP1 student. We're going to see how it works. Yes?
So what's, instead of this just being like, do you want to work for it or not, what other supports are you putting in place for kids who want to do that but need support to get there?
So are you a plant? Did someone push me? One of the supports that we need to do is we need to begin to supplement what we're giving these students. And one way we can do that we're going to attempt to do next year, we don't exactly know what that's going to look like yet, is we're going to try and build our schedule a little bit different. And is anyone here engaged in a large-scale schedule change? Does anyone ever want to do that again? No, it's miserable, okay? It's a lot of work up front. There's a lot of people that are going to dislike you for being, supporting one or the other. And in fact, most people, and teachers I think especially, don't want to change anything because they are grinding every day. It's like, I just got going on this. I just felt comfortable. Now you're going to pull the rug out from under them. All right? And that's how they might feel about MTSS too, just saying. Okay? It's true. It's change. It's difficult. It's hard. And teachers are already overburdened. We need to recognize all those things and be as gentle as we can with it. But if you saw yesterday, we need to use kind of the dental analogy. Okay? Everyone has a right to go to the dentist. Some people are going to need more. All right? But that doesn't mean they don't go to the dentist anymore. If you need oral surgery, you still go to the dentist. If you need braces, you still go to the dentist. And for those students that are maybe struggling, they still need access to rigorous Tier 1 instruction and coursework, but they might need a little something more. All right? And that can come in a lot of different forms. Hopefully we can do it in the classroom. But if we can't, we might need to come up with ideas within our schedule to give them additional support. Does that make sense? I should stop at certain points to say, does anyone have questions or like a thought that's kind of bubbling up like we should talk about? There's a lot of people in here. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what schedule change ideas you guys have discussed or thinking about, and whether anybody has this software app currently in place, intervention block embedded into the day.
Absolutely perfect that people are asking these questions. So that's actually a great question. Let me go to the next slide. Why this isn't working very well. Okay. A lot of, has anyone ever heard of this concept, a Windlock? Is anyone employing a Windlock in their school? Awesome. Okay. So a Windlock is something that a lot of schools are choosing to go to, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school. Okay. And what is a Windlock? First of all, you need to examine data and figure out what kids need. Okay? You don't just, well, you can just throw it in there and figure it out as you go. I don't know if that's a bad thing to do either, okay? Because it's different for everyone. There's no, there's no protocol here. Do this first and then do this, because we're all very different. We come from different districts with different kids and different needs and different pressure factors on us, so you need to determine what you need to do in order you need to do it. Well, what does it do? Provide time during the day in which students can access what they need without sacrificing Tier 1 opportunities. Students who don't require support, and we have those students, what can we give them? All right, so in my school, for instance, we're on a block schedule. We only have 4 classes a day. Some kids are highly driven. They want to take all these AP courses, but they're also a wonderful artist, but they can't take art. So maybe this Windlock in my school could be an opportunity for a student who doesn't need additional supports to get through math and English or whatever, to go and participate in art once or twice a week, or something like that, giving kids what they need to be balanced and well-rounded and things like that. Okay? So what could they do? Pursue other interests, read a book, art, music, phys ed, clubs and activities. In my school, we have a ton of clubs and activities. We have like 60 clubs. But we also have about 55 to 60% of students that participate in athletics on any given season. They can't do both. They just can't, because the clubs meet after school. So my thought, what I would like to envision for my school is that, hey, once a month at least we could have environmental club meet during Windlock, so that if you wanted to be in it, you could be a part of it without having to sacrifice it. You're not going to skip soccer practice. Coach isn't going to be okay with that. So maybe you can be a part of that. So it's not just about intervention, but also enrichment, which I love that idea. And teachers have the opportunity to determine if a student needs to come back. And it doesn't have to be a kid that has an IEP or a 504. It can be any student who might be struggling, just like when we talk about the DCAP, that's not for kids on IEPs or 504s, that's for all kids. So if you have a kid that's struggling and they don't have an accommodation, they can still get extra help if that's what they need to meet the standard. Okay, they can get a little bit of extra time. Or maybe they can use a Venn diagram for, meeting the needs in the social studies course or whatever. Okay? That doesn't mean the kid can't do it. It just means they might need a little bit of scaffolding. Right? But again, that's a mindset consideration. All right, so we have some folks in my district who are using this. So Swell Union Elementary is in Dunstable, and a guy named Pete Myerson is the principal, and you'll meet Pete. But he shared this with me. He just said, we were talking about it. He said, like, this is something I walked into in class today. A typical Windlock in elementary school. A lot of must-dos. These are things you have to do. And then if you've done that, or you're not required to do anything else, these are all the things you can do. And this is just within the confines of one classroom. They're not going anywhere else. These are all things that were prepared by a classroom teacher and or a parent. Okay? But you'll notice in the must-dos, there's a small group of Mrs. J. I don't know what that small group is, but I'm assuming it's kids that need additional support for something, that they're maybe not fully understanding what happened in math block today. That's probably ELAs, because it's math with Mrs. Deneen, and these are the kids that need to go with Mrs. Deneen because that's who meets with Mrs. Deneen. So they're not going to miss phys ed, and they're not going to miss social studies, and they're not going to get pulled out for other things, because during the Windlock, that 40 minutes, they get what they need there, and other kids can do some enrichment activities if that's what they want. Yes, sir.
So I think this is great, and I think you mentioned earlier when you make any shift that it creates other challenges that come up, and so one consideration, I'm wondering how other folks have dealt with this, done Windlock, especially at like middle and high school levels, and for kids that are always going into that academic extra support, they may be missing that enrichment, which is so you're closing achievement gaps or you're opening opportunity gaps, like if there are certain kids that are getting those robotics or the extra language or the community service opportunities with that kind of 21st century global education skill that may help to propel those kids to more opportunities that the kids who are getting the extra academic enrichment don't get. The academic enrichment is like on a hierarchy needs is probably more important for those kids so they can access those 21st century skills, but how can schools take that into account to make sure that everybody's getting those enrichment opportunities too?
So we don't have it, but I can tell you I've talked to a lot of colleagues at the high school level, because that's what I'm focused on. And one thing that they have to consider is how many days a week are we going to offer the Windlock or enrichment block or whatever they call it. And so some do it 5 days a week, and on Monday they have advisory, because in high school pretty much advisory is because of NEASC, has become a standard. Okay? So they have advisory on Monday in which they determine what they're going to do for the rest of the week. This is just one example. Okay? And so as I'm thinking about it, I thought about the same thing, because one thing we really stress at GD is balance. Because we have so many kids with social and emotional struggles that need the break. Maybe they don't need math, again, 30 minutes every single day because this kid's about to short circuit. It would be helpful if we could get that kid who also needs math up to the argument maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks. So I think that's a consideration that is district-based, school-based, those kind of things. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to be pushing, and I know my math colleagues, and they do an amazing job. I'm not picking on my math colleagues because they're great, but they're going to be like, I don't want to lose any time. Or I only want it twice a week because we need that. You can't go from 82 to 77 minutes. We'll never read our curriculum. So I'm going to have to negotiate with them to get them on board to say, this is going to be beneficial for you in the end. Because if you can get them for another half hour, once a week, the kids are really needed, then you're not really missing anything. You know, that's my rosy view of it. It's not going to work out that way. Yes.
I work in elementary school. I tried this at the literacy level
Yes.
for several years, and we found it to be very successful because we were working at the depth levels of what the students need and filling gaps pretty quickly. And so kids were motivated to move to the larger groups that were more independent, more working on what they needed. It filled itself. And it gave
Organic, like we talked about.
and the kids that were struggling, but they also got some attention to have what they were good at.
So there's one good success story for literacy at the elementary level.
So that enrichment piece kind of came naturally.
Yeah, wonderful. So maybe to work, but what I'm guessing is whatever, if you go down this road, or if you're already down that road, you're going to hit speed bumps. There's going to be changes that are going to need to be made. What I'm doing is working with all of my curriculum coordinators to help them, to help me come up with the plan. So when it goes out to the staff, it's not just me, because that never works, okay? I can jam it down their throats, but they're going to just resist, and I would too. So they need to be a part of it and help come up with the ideas. And I might have to give a little bit of what I want to get there, but maybe we can improve it as we go along. All right, so what I want to share with you is some people that are really in it, all right? So I know some of this is coming just from Groton and Dunstable, which may not be very similar to your district. Maybe it is. But I wanted to get some professionals who have implemented this to talk about it today, because I really didn't feel like I could confidently talk to middle school and elementary school teachers and principals and say, this is what's right for you, because I don't know. I'm not there. So I want to introduce you to some friends of mine. Let's see. Hopefully this works, because I had some technical difficulties. Mirko, Pete, and Chris have all instituted Windlocks or something like that in elementary school and middle school successfully in recent years. So they were nice enough to take some time, oh boy, don't go there, take some time to share their thoughts. So let me, and that's not working. Bear with me, people. This is a huge part of my presentation, so I'm glad this is going so well. You heard it earlier, right? It worked. You come up and help me. You seem to know what you're talking about.
I'm just taking a while to answer, but it's saying that.
Oh, so it's not me?
Oh, well, the internet's down.
I shouldn't need internet. That's in the presentation.
It might be a link. Everybody offline.
Typically we have 55 probably cut down last year with that
but it's the ability to give students the time that they're going to need either for reteaching or for extensions.
Okay, you ready? Yeah. Sorry. Keep clicking it. You think that'll work?
But you take the time that small. Contract says period.
That's audio. So this little skit that we worked up here is just an example of how you need to be flexible and go with the flow if we're going to get anything implemented. But let me share something with you because I might run out of time if this takes a while. So we have Mirko, Pete, and Chris who are representative of, but I would say kind of typical districts. Mirko works in Cambridge, who is the kind of part of yours. So I wanted to try and find someone that maybe got, Groton is a very kind of idyllic country town, very homogeneous in its population, not very diverse. So I wanted to get some different aspects. So I got those three guys, and then I said, I need something that's not typical. Like they all institute Windlocks. I need someone who's got a bunch of stuff going on that doesn't fit your typical middle school or elementary school, because there might be people here that have the same problems. Someone maybe in the inner city who has so many things going on that we can't just take 30 minutes out of the day and expect that we're going to meet the needs of all of our kids. And so I had the exact right person, and I talked to her. I said, I need you to do a video film. Would you do that? And she immediately said, I'm not comfortable doing that. But I kept at it, right? Like, I need you to do this. But it's just like one of those people that you can never connect with. Like I went to Pete's school, I went to Chris' school. Merkel was so nice to record it himself. But for a week and a half now, I've been trying to connect with this amazing assistant principal and just couldn't do it. So the problem with this is that it's my wife. And so I was able to get all of these other people to get these presentations for me, but I just want to, because eventually it's going to get done, or you'll be able to access it online later. So I just wanted to give you a snippet of what my wife did for me, because her dad took a terrible fall last week, hit his head. He's been in and out of tufts for the last week. So it's been a stressful week. We have 3 kids. Is it working? Okay. And we have 3 kids. So yesterday, as I'm trying to find, I'm like, Kellyanne, I really need this. This is, I think, important to make sure that people understand that it doesn't have to be kind of one-size-fits-all Windlock. I'm like, how about, I'm waiting for open house. We haven't seen each other in 2 days. Why don't you just take a video of yourself and send it along to me, and this is what I need. So she's like, I haven't really slept in 2 days. I'm at the hospital with my dad. This probably is not the right time to ask me. I'm like, yeah, I know that. I love you so much. But I have a big presentation tomorrow, and honestly, I'm kind of nervous about it. So, maybe you could just do that. So, reluctantly, she did that. So, I will share. I won't need to share that story when we get there, but hopefully this is going to work, right? I hope. Why is that happening? What? Yeah, you loved it, exactly. All right, well, why don't I do this? All right, because she told me I'll go there first, and then if we can get the other part working, we will. Because I can pull up those videos separately. She said, you need to make sure they know I didn't sleep, I don't have any makeup on, and you're going to notice, you're going to see her in my kitchen, clearly, the kids are bothering her. So please understand those things, and I'll pull these up, and we'll show one at a time. Oh boy, see, she's not going to be happy about that.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Kellyanne Woodlock, soy la ayudante de la directora en la escuela Moore en la ciudad de Lowell, Massachusetts, y quería decirle un poquito de mi horario en mi escuela elementaria.
Anyone understand that? Who speaks Spanish? Okay. All right, let me go to, there's a reason for that. Let me go to this one. In the kitchen, 2 hours later.
So if it was difficult for you to understand what I had been saying in that last clip, you would understand a little bit about what happens for some of the students that attend my school. You see, at the Morey School, about 500 students, we have about 200 students for whom English is not their first language and they're still developing the English language. And so that brings a particular set of circumstances when it comes to interventions. And so one thing that we do at the Morey Elementary School is that at times we have some supports layered into classrooms as tier 2 interventions. And so during part of the tier 1 time, at times there are additional teachers present in classrooms who are licensed EL teachers who are helping students to develop their language. And so there are times when readers are included in a reading workshop, for example, and are doing some of their work independently and are working towards their own goals, where they may be called for a short time to work on some specific language goals that they need to have some assistance with to be able to access the curriculum that they're being taught within their classroom. In addition, we have had some changes to our staffing this year, and so we had paraprofessional support that has been reduced by 40% this year. And so because of that change, we've had to be very careful with our scheduling of our tier 1, our tier 2 interventions, and the times that students are available to have additional supports. It's been a little bit tricky with scheduling, but that's all part of what you need to do when you're working with young learners. And so there are times when children might miss one particular content area so that they can catch up on some survival English. So we kind of look at the whole child, decide what it is that they need the most, and give them that during learning time. We do whatever we can to make sure that every child has exposure to the Tier 1 curriculum, but there have been some instances, for example, when a student comes in and is a newcomer and doesn't know how to ask, how do I go to the bathroom, or, I'm hungry, some of those basic needs. There might be times where they're pulled from Tier 1 instruction for short stints to make sure that they can do those things before they're put back into that situation. I hope this helps.
So I wanted her to share that because I don't want anyone to think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. They are doing it at the Morey School, which is a really successful school in the city of Lowell that has a very high EL population. They're doing very, very well, but there are situations where they can't do everything in Tier 1. Kids have to leave sometimes because they don't know the language. All right? They have to get some specialized support. So maybe that relates to your school, or maybe there are similar aspects in some of your districts. It's not all going to work out perfectly. What I think I can do, so the bad thing here is I had it all worked out, like it was going to flow really nicely, and you would see the specific questions that they were answering. But generally the first question, and I can play these individually, and it won't look as good, but we're adapting, okay, is, kind of what's a Windlock look like in your school? So, you see, well, it's great. Take that out of the trash.
Where it's the ability to give students the time that they're going to need either for reteaching or for extensions. Sometimes we don't always get that in the classroom, so now we have a designated time to do that.
It's also a ventriloquist.
We can focus in specifically on what the kids need at that time.
Let me see if I can get I might have to scrap it.
At Putnam Ave, we have an intervention/enrichment block built into our day, which follows the WIN model. WIN being an acronym for what I need. Now, the power of having a block such as this in the day is that it provides you with the opportunity to provide your students with what they need. That can be additional supports in the area of mathematics or their literacy development. That can be additional supports in the areas of science. It can also be an opportunity for them to really dig into some extension activities and to explore things that don't live in the confines of your core curriculum.
You guys have to imagine this flowing really nicely together. If you would do that, that'd be great.
Well, it gives the kids the opportunity and the teachers to work with kids at all different levels. The entire activity or lesson, there's time for them that day or the next day to work on it again, to review it. It lets the teachers have extra time to catch up those kids that are struggling, and also for those kids who are accelerating, they can go beyond the curriculum and work during the time. Also, kids who get pull-up services often get pulled up during wind time, so not missing class lessons or activities.
Seriously, he's not in the witness protection program. Who knows why that's happening? All right, we're working with what we got.
The barriers were definitely the time, right away.
So I should say this should have come up as a nice little script down the bottom. What are some of the barriers you faced when you tried to implement a Windlock?
About half an hour days that were taken out of the school day. They were a little worried, but as we tightened the schedule up, we saw we did have time. And then once we put it in, the first year we had the teachers play around with it and work on it. And now they know the benefits of it. Another barrier was the planning time. It does take time to plan for WIN, but after they do it for about a year, the planning's just about done, and so it gets easier every year.
Let's try and... Why don't we do this? I'll pull up some of these, and while I'm doing that, why don't you at your tables or with partners from your district talk about, if you're looking at doing this, what barriers do you think are your biggest barriers in implementing something different in your curriculum or in your schedule. And you talk about yourselves for a few minutes, and then we'll share out. And then while you're doing that, I'll try and pull up the rest of it.
If you want to go now, I can just grab this.
Yeah, no, but it's
college prep accelerated
It makes me think that you guys have any like here to talk about English being an honor, he's on the level of experience there. So it's not that you don't miss anything or we it's like the one thing we're trying to hear you say is I'm someone who does social sports, I'm not going to get it because I'm doing an honor class.
But if you happen to be like if it's an immediate, then you know
Is that what we're doing? You know, like, so I think one thing
I get it.
Like, so we're assuming
like a burden, you know, like Right before an optimizing.
So how is this going to keep up? Is that, I think people often think the case of that. So I have all the answers. No, but it's a good question to ask, but I think it's based on assumptions always. I think it's a conversation we're having about the buy-in from the classroom. Right? Like, we're not going to go back to our school and say we're doing this and all the students are doing it. Like, I think it's the teacher of that class is going to have the same question. We've done it in a couple of cases. Like, we have, it was started from electric, we have a full year team robotics course. They complete it, so we're saying we give your honors credit, right? We can obligate the students actually, right? That's the version that's different. We've taught two general elective development. We've taught economics, CP, and honors now, schedule efficiency, honor, and that teacher has to meet those things. So what happens is all four
Is Kim not coming today?
that teacher's going to come around. So,
Oh, and yeah, I just know people that go with
Stations. And one teaching teacher. Right. It's either video or 5 of them. There's someone that really their bodies are bigger and the whole
My best friends are in high school. We're getting married tomorrow, so we've just been like sending pictures of us all when we were younger. No, she's in Boston.
Oh yeah, I think yeah.
She's getting married at a weekend.
a lot of people
It's to contemporary. It's on the waterfront. I've never been, but it's like down in the seaport area of Boston. So we're gonna go there. We were thinking about making a weekend out of it, but I take a cab. It's reasonable, so I don't cab it tomorrow. I'm the only one that's married out of all of my friends from high school. So, like, go away for a weekend, or, we're all in very different places, or we have been, so it's nice for someone to kind of come on my island,
Okay, we'll come together in about 1 minute.
Bathing in the sun. She just loves it. And in the morning, she'll sleep later than my husband and I. She'll stay in the bed and just sleep.
We're still trying to we do have finding success in psychology, finding success for sure, scoring a 2. But is that success, or is it that they kept up with the course, they did well, they learned, like, really good?
Okay, why don't we come together, maybe we can share out a couple of things that we've come up with. Maybe we'll learn from each other and find out maybe some things we hadn't considered that we need to consider. But does anyone want to share like what's a huge barrier they see as to moving towards schedule change or something along those lines? Anyone want to share anything? One thing I would say, oh yeah, you got something right there?
So you said barriers, correct?
Pardon me?
Barriers to schedule change?
Yeah, what do you think?
So as we're talking, we have a lot, right? I think it's our mindset, first of all. I think there's some things that really challenge my thinking here, and so I need to be convinced that I'm doing the right thing and why I'm doing that thing. But then communicate that out to my staff and to my team. So I think I'm my own biggest barrier right now.
Yeah, you need to be confident before you move forward, right? Make sure you have it all together. That's a good everyone. Anyone else? Yes?
My colleagues were trying to say that at the definition of success. I was going to say initially, success is kind of a definition problem for us, that nobody wants to risk the success that they enjoy.
Yes. That's a huge one for me, is broadening the meaning of success, because at my school, I think what's been celebrated have been AP scores, MCAS scores, and how we do on those types of things. And if we institute what we're talking about doing and getting all students in there and getting more students into AP courses, what's likely to happen to our AP scores? They're probably going to go down a little bit, right? But what's the meaning of success that we're really looking? Maybe it's the number of students that are in the proportionality of students that are taking AP is our success measure. Maybe that's what we're focused on. So a lot of the things that we need to break down are things that have been institutionally built to measure success over the course of a lot of years. And I've been saying this for a few years now, like, we're trying to do something, and the teachers are saying, no, this is what we get measured on. This is what they publish every year, and this is what they talk about at school committee meetings. And it's my job as a leader to say, well, I need them to talk about this, because this is what's really important to us right now. Not that we're going to say those things aren't important. We still want to maintain, high expectations for those things, but what else is going to define our success? But that's a district thing too, right? The district has to say, the school committee has to be on board and say, this is what we want to see. Show us this. If they're not on board, it'll be hard to get our staff there. So one thing I would ask, and I've given up, I'm sorry on that. One thing I would ask you, because we're running out of time, is, how can you leverage some things to get where you want to go? Okay, so a lot of the time, it's hard to be the bad guy as the principal, because you need to maintain a decent level of positive culture. And if they see us as ramming things down their throats, that's not going to sit well with them, and I don't blame them. All right? But sometimes things come from other places in which we have to say, this is something we have to do, like, heterogeneous groupings in classes, because it's part of our accreditation. How are we going to do this? Let's get together and figure it out. And one of the things at my high school, and I'm sure you can find things at your school, one of the things is NEAS. One of the things that they say is we should be showing evidence of an intervention block in our schedule. It says that. That's how we get accredited. All right, so that's something that I can use as a high school principal and say, staff, we need to come up with something here. Maybe it doesn't have to be today, but we need to come up with something, because this is what we're being accredited on, and we want a good rating. Everyone wants a good rating. The other thing is, in my evaluation, and I can't recall off the top of my head which standard it is right now, but it states specifically that I need to create comprehensive and uninterrupted blocks of time so that all students will have access to the curriculum. All students. All right, so that's something that has to drive what I do and Katie's my boss, and she's going to be evaluating me. If I'm not doing that, and she holds true to what she was talking about before, I'm going to get hit on that. So I might even share that with my staff. Look, this is something that I have to do. The state's saying this is part of my evaluation. NEASC is saying this. MTSS is part of, in in-state laws. The DCAP is a state law that we're supposed to be giving all of our students these accommodations as needed. These are things that we have to do. So you don't have to be the bad guy all the time, because that's not going to sit well either. Right? So I try and just identify the things that we have to do, the reasons why we have to do them, and ask them to help me get there. We're out of time. Guys, thanks for your patience.